The government wants your silver, not tomorrow, not someday, right now. A leaked document from JP Morgan surfaced 3 weeks ago. The document was not meant for public eyes. It outlined a federal strategy to identify, track, and potentially seize private silver holdings across the United States. The leak came from an internal compliance division. It was shared with select institutional clients. Someone inside decided the public needed to know. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented planning. The document references something called the Strategic Mineral Security Act. This act does not exist yet in public law, but the framework is being built, the language is being written, the justification is being prepared, and silver sits at the center of it all. Why silver? Why now? Silver is not just a precious metal anymore. It is a critical industrial component. Every solar panel uses silver. Every electric vehicle uses silver. Every smartphone, every computer, every military guidance system uses silver. The green energy transition that Washington keeps pushing requires massive amounts of silver, more than the market can currently supply. The United States imports most of its silver. Domestic mines produce only a fraction of what American industry needs. Mexico supplies nearly half of all silver that enters this country. Peru and Canada provide most of the rest. But relationships with these countries are becoming unstable. Trade tensions are rising. Supply chains are being questioned. When the government cannot buy what it needs, it takes what it wants. This is not new behavior. This is a historical pattern repeating itself. In 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. That order forced every American citizen to surrender their gold to the federal government. People were paid a fixed price. They had no choice. If you refused, you faced 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. That would be nearly $200,000 today. The government called it national emergency. They said the economy would collapse without it. They said it was temporary. It was not temporary. Americans could not legally own gold again until 1974, 41 years later. Silver was also targeted back then, but less aggressively. The government bought silver from citizens at market rates, but they did not force confiscation the same way they did with gold. Silver was seen as less critical. That calculation has changed. Today, silver is more important to national security than gold ever was. The Morgan leak shows government lawyers examining the legal precedent from 1933. They are studying what worked. They are studying what failed. They are building a modern version that closes the loopholes people used last time. Here is what most people are missing. The document does not call this confiscation. It calls it a mandatory acquisition. It calls it strategic reserve consolidation. It calls it an emergency mineral requisition. The words are different. The result is the same. Your property becomes government property. The plan has 3 phases. Phase 1 is registration. The government creates a database of who owns silver and how much. This happens quietly through new reporting requirements. Dealers get told to report large purchases. Banks get told to flag safe deposit boxes. Refineries get told to track shipments. Most people will not even notice this is happening until it is already done. Phase 2 is valuation. The government sets a fixed price for silver. This price will be lower than the market value. They will call it fair compensation. They will base it on some average historical price. They will ignore current demand. They will ignore future value. They will tell you this is what your silver is worth, and that is final. Phase 3 is collection. The government issues the order. You have 90 days to surrender your silver. You get paid the fixed price. If you do not comply, penalties begin. Fines first. Criminal charges later. They will not come to your house with guns on day 1. They will make examples out of a few people. They will make it easier to comply than to resist. This is how power moves when it thinks no one is watching. The Morgan document specifically mentions physical silver held by private citizens. It mentions silver coins, silver bars, and silver bullion. It does not mention jewelry, silverware, or antiques, but the language is broad enough to include those later if needed. The reasoning given is national security. The government argues that private hoarding of strategic materials threatens industrial capacity. They argue that individual ownership prevents the government from meeting defense needs. They argue that in times of crisis, personal property rights must yield to national interest. You have heard this language before. It was used to justify lockdowns. It was used to justify mandates. It is always the same structure: crisis, necessity, compliance, enforcement. But here is what they are not telling you. The government does not need your silver for national defense. They need it to subsidize the green energy industry. They need it to make their climate goals look achievable. They need it because they made promises about electric vehicles and solar panels that cannot be kept without cheap silver. Private companies that produce these products need silver at low cost, or their business models collapse. If silver prices keep rising and the entire green transition becomes economically impossible, the government cannot let that happen. So they will take silver from citizens and give it to corporations at below market prices. This is not about security. This is about a subsidy. The average American over 40 remembers when the government did not interfere with private property this way. You remember when what you owned actually belonged to you. You remember when savings meant something. You remember when hard assets were protection against government mistakes. That version of America is being dismantled piece by piece. The Morgan leak proves this is not theoretical anymore. This is active planning. The document includes timelines. It includes legal citations. It includes projected compliance rates. They have already calculated how many people will fight this and how many will surrender quietly. They expect 70% compliance within the first 90 days. They expect another 20% compliance after the first few prosecutions. They expect 10% resistance that will require ongoing enforcement. These are real numbers from real planning documents. Most people will never see this coming. They think precious metals are safe because they are physical assets. They think the government cannot touch what you hold in your hand. They do not understand that laws change faster than awareness spreads. The people who own silver right now fall into a few categories. Some bought it as an investment. Some bought it as inflation protection. Some bought it because they do not trust banks or currency. All of them believe they made a smart decision, but none of them expected the government to simply take it. Here is the mechanism they will use. Congress will not pass a law called the Silver Confiscation Act. That would create too much attention. Instead, they will attach the language to a must-pass defense bill or infrastructure package. It will be buried on page 800 of a 2,000-page document. It will pass at 2 a.m. with no debate. Most members of Congress will not even know it is there. This is how legislative power works now. Big decisions happen in small print. The president will sign it because the larger bill is too important to veto. The media will barely cover it. They will run one segment about strategic mineral reserves. They will interview one expert who says it makes sense. Then they will move on to the next story. By the time average Americans realize what happened, the registration phase will already be complete. Your dealer will have already reported your purchases. Your bank will have already flagged your safe deposit box. Your refinery will have already logged your transactions. The database will be built before you even know it exists. Then the valuation will be announced. Silver will be priced at maybe $18 per ounce when the market price is $35. The government will call this fair. They will point to some 10-year average that ignores recent spikes. They will say this protects against speculation and hoarding. Then the order will come. 90 days to comply, payment at the fixed rate, criminal penalties for refusal. Most people will comply. They always do. The system is designed to make resistance harder than surrender. But here is what makes this different from 1933. Back then, gold was mostly about money and banking. But the government wanted control over currency. They wanted to devalue the dollar against gold. And they could not do that if citizens held gold privately. It was a monetary policy decision. This time, silver is about industrial control. The government wants to control who has access to the materials that power modern technology. They want to pick winners and losers in the green economy. They want corporations dependent on government supply. This is not about protecting the dollar. This is about controlling the future. And most Americans over 40 will lose wealth they thought was protected. The Morgan leak reveals something most financial analysts are ignoring. The document includes a section called institutional exemptions. This section lists which entities will be allowed to keep their silver holdings even after the mandatory acquisition order goes into effect. The list is very specific. The list is very telling. Major banks are exempt. Investment firms managing over $5 billion in assets are exempt. Corporations with existing government contracts are exempt. Foreign central banks holding silver in American vaults are exempt. Defense contractors are exempt. Individual citizens are not exempt. Small businesses are not exempt. Local coin shops are not exempt. Private investors are not exempt. This creates a two-tier system. The powerful keep their assets. Everyone else surrenders theirs. This is not an accidental design. This is an intentional policy. The justification given in the document is efficiency. The government claims that tracking and managing thousands of smallholders is too complex. They claim that working with large institutions is simpler and faster. They claim this serves the national interest better. But the real reason is control. Large institutions do what the government tells them to do. They have lawyers and compliance departments. They have relationships with regulators. They negotiate terms. They stay quiet. Individual citizens do not cooperate the same way. Citizens ask questions. Citizens complain. Citizens go to the media. Citizens sue. The government wants to avoid that complexity, so they built a system that targets regular people while protecting institutional wealth. The Morgan document estimates that private citizens hold approximately 200 million ounces of silver in physical form across the United States. That number comes from coin sales data, import records, and dealer reports. It is probably conservative. The real number might be higher. At current market prices, that represents roughly $7 billion in private wealth. At the government's proposed fixed price, that same silver would be valued at about $3.5 billion. The difference is $3.5 billion that gets transferred from citizens to the government. That transfer happens through forced sale at below market rates. It is not technically theft. because the government will pay you something, but it is not voluntary either. This is called legal confiscation. The government creates a law that forces you to sell your property at a price you did not agree to. You get compensated. You just do not get to say no. Here's what happens to that silver after the government takes it. The document describes something called the Strategic Industrial Reserve. This reserve will be managed by the Department of Energy in coordination with the Department of Defense. Silver from the Mandatory Acquisition Program will go into this reserve. But the reserve is not really a stockpile. It is a distribution system. The government will sell silver from the reserve to approved companies at subsidized prices. These companies will be manufacturers of solar panels, electric vehicles, and military equipment. They will get silver at maybe $20 per ounce when the market price is $35 per ounce. This gives these companies a massive competitive advantage. They can underbid competitors who have to buy silver at market rates. They can expand production faster. They can report better profit margins. The government will call this industrial policy. They will say it strengthens American manufacturing. They will say it creates jobs and promotes clean energy. What they will not say is that this advantage comes directly from your pocket. You surrendered silver at $18 per ounce. The government sells it to corporations at $20 per ounce. Corporations use it to build products they sell at full market prices. You lose $15 to $20 per ounce. Corporations gain $15 per ounce. The government takes a $2 per ounce handling fee. Everyone wins except the citizen who owned the silver in the first place. This is how modern wealth transfer works. It does not look like theft. It looks like policy. It gets announced in press releases with official seals and important sounding titles, but the result is the same as if someone just took your property. The Morgan leak also reveals the enforcement mechanism. The document describes a new division within the Treasury Department called the Minerals Compliance Office. This office will have the authority to audit citizens, businesses, and financial institutions. They will have access to bank records, safe deposit logs, and transaction histories. If they believe you owned silver and did not surrender it, they can freeze your bank accounts pending investigation. They can place liens on your property. They can refer you to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. The burden of proof falls on you. You have to prove you did not own silver or that you already surrendered it. They do not have to prove you are hiding anything. You are guilty until you demonstrate innocence. This reverses the normal legal standard. In most criminal cases, the government must prove you did something wrong. In mineral compliance cases, you must prove you did nothing wrong. This shift happens because the government classifies this as regulatory enforcement rather than criminal prosecution. Regulatory agencies have broader powers than criminal prosecutors. They can investigate without warrants. They can impose penalties without trials. They operate in a different legal framework. Most Americans do not understand this distinction. They think their constitutional rights protect them. Those rights apply differently when the government uses regulatory power instead of criminal power. The Morgan document specifically mentions Bitcoin and cryptocurrency holders as a secondary target. The reasoning is that people who own physical silver often also own digital assets. The government sees both as threats to centralized control. The document suggests that information gathered during silver registration could be used to identify cryptocurrency holders for future action. This is called parallel construction. The government uses one legal authority to gather information, then uses that information for a different purpose later. This means that complying with silver registration might expose you to cryptocurrency enforcement down the road. The data gets shared between agencies. Your name goes into multiple databases. You become a permanent person of interest. Privacy dies in stages. First, they track your transactions. Then they track your assets. Then they track your intentions. Each step seems reasonable by itself. Together they create total surveillance. Here's what most people are not considering. Silver prices will spike the moment this plan becomes public. Right now, the market does not know this is coming. The leaked Morgan document has not reached mainstream attention yet. When it does, everyone who understands what it means will rush to buy silver before registration begins. A surge in demand will drive prices up rapidly. Silver could hit $50 or $60 per ounce within weeks. The government mint will use that spike as justification for the mandatory acquisition program. They will say speculators are hoarding strategic materials. They will say prices are being manipulated. They will say emergency action is required. The price spike will actually accelerate the confiscation timeline. This creates a trap. If you buy silver now, you might catch the price increase, but you will also get caught in the registration system. If you wait, prices will be higher, but the window to own silver at all will be closing. There is no safe move once this process starts. The people who benefit most from this plan are the ones who already own silver through institutional channels. Large investment funds hold silver in allocated accounts. Those accounts are protected under the exemption rules. The value of their holdings will increase as private competition gets eliminated. This is regulatory capture in action. Big players help write the rules. The rules protect big players. Small players get pushed out. Wealth concentrates at the top. The Morgan document includes modeling that shows how silver markets will behave after mandatory acquisition. They predict private ownership will drop by 80% within 2 years. They predict institutional ownership will increase by 40%. They predict that the government will control 30% of all available silver in the United States. That level of control allows the government to set prices regardless of market conditions. If corporations need cheap silver, the government provides it. If the government wants to punish a company, they cut off the supply. This turns silver from a market commodity into a political tool. Every time the government gains this kind of power, they promise it is temporary. They promise it will only be used in emergencies. They promise oversight and accountability. Those promises never survive contact with reality. Power does not voluntarily reduce itself. Agencies do not shut down once they are created. Programs do not end once they start. The Minerals Compliance Office will still exist in 20 years. It will still have enforcement authority. It will still be tracking assets and freezing accounts. You are watching the construction of permanent infrastructure for government control over private wealth. The Americans most affected by this are the ones who saved carefully and planned. People who bought silver over the past 20 years as insurance against inflation. People who diversified out of dollars because they did not trust monetary policy. People who worked hard and set aside something tangible. Those people did everything right according to the old rules. They saved, they avoided debt, they bought real assets. But the rules changed while they were playing the game. This is the pattern that keeps repeating. The government creates a crisis through bad policy. The government uses that crisis to justify taking more power. The government uses that power to transfer wealth from citizens to politically connected interests. The government calls this progress. The cycle never stops. It just finds new targets. Right now, the target is silver. Next year, it might be farmland. The year after, it might be water rights. Whatever asset becomes strategically important becomes a target for government acquisition. The legal framework being built for silver will work for anything else the government decides it needs. This is not about silver. This is about establishing the principle that the government can take what it wants when it decides something is important enough. Once that principle is accepted, nothing you own is truly yours. Everything becomes conditional. Your property rights exist only until the government decides they do not. Most Americans over 40 remember a country where property rights meant something absolute. You bought land, and it was your land. You bought gold, it was your gold. You built a business, it was your business. The government could not just take these things because they wanted them. That version of America is already gone. Most people have not yet noticed. The timing of the Morgan leak matters more than the content. The document was circulated internally in late December. It reached select clients in early January. It leaked to the public 3 weeks ago, but the planning behind it started much earlier. The government does not build programs this detailed in a few months. The legal research alone takes years. The coordination between Treasury, Energy, Defense, and Justice requires endless meetings and draft proposals. The modeling and projections need data that takes time to collect. This plan has been in development since at least 2022, probably longer. That means the government has been preparing to take your silver while telling you everything is fine, while telling you markets are free, while telling you property rights are protected. The gap between what the government says and what the government plans is where your freedom disappears. The Morgan document includes a section on public messaging. This section outlines how the government will explain the mandatory acquisition program to citizens. The language is carefully constructed. Every word is tested. They will not call it confiscation. They will call it a voluntary surrender program with mandatory participation for national security purposes. They will not call it wealth transfer. They will call it fair market compensation based on historical pricing models. They will not call it government overreach. They will call it emergency mineral security reform. The messaging document suggests using phrases like protecting American industry, securing supply chains, and ensuring energy independence. These phrases poll well with voters over 40. They sound reasonable. They sound patriotic. This is how bad policy gets sold. Wrap it in the flag. Attach it to security. Make opposition sound unpatriotic. Anyone who objects to silver confiscation will be called a hoarder, a speculator, or someone putting personal profit above national interest. The media will run stories about people hiding precious metals while American factories struggle to find materials. They will interview workers who lost jobs because silver was too expensive. They will never interview the citizens whose property was taken. Those people will not fit the narrative. Public opinion will be managed before most people even understand what is happening. By the time you realize you should object, objecting will already be socially unacceptable. This is third-generation propaganda. It does not force you to think a certain way. It makes thinking the wrong way feel impossible. The legal challenges to this program will fail. The courts have already decided these questions. The 1933 gold confiscation was challenged immediately. The Supreme Court upheld it. They ruled that the government has broad power during economic emergencies. They ruled that monetary policy justifies property seizure. They ruled that compensation does not have to match market value as long as it is not completely arbitrary. Those precedents still stand. Modern courts will cite them. Lower courts will follow Supreme Court guidance. Appeals will be denied. The program will proceed while cases work through the system. By the time any case reaches the Supreme Court, millions of ounces will already be surrendered. The program will be operational. The court will rule that the issue is moot because the seizure already occurred. This is how the government defeats legal challenges. Move fast, create facts on the ground, make reversal impractical. Your only protection would have been political action before the law passed. But the law will pass in the middle of the night, attached to something else. There will be no time for political action, no time for calls to Congress, no time to organize resistance. This is why the Morgan leak matters. It gives you a narrow window to understand what is coming. That window will close fast. Here is what you cannot do. You cannot hide your silver and hope the government forgets about you. The registration system will be comprehensive. Dealers have already been reporting large purchases for years under existing anti-money laundering rules. Those records exist. They will be transferred to the Minerals Compliance Office. If you bought silver through any legitimate channel, there's a record. If you stored it in a bank safe deposit box, there's a record. If you shipped it through insured mail, there's a record. The only silver that might escape registration is silver bought decades ago with cash from now-defunct dealers. Even then, if you ever sold silver or moved it, you probably created a record somewhere. Modern surveillance is too complete for effective hiding. The old methods do not work anymore. Some people will try to sell their silver before registration begins. This will flood the market. Prices will drop temporarily. Dealers will be overwhelmed. Many will stop buying because they know confiscation is coming. The secondary market will collapse. You will be left holding silver you cannot sell at a fair price and cannot keep legally. This is the worst possible position. Other people will try to convert silver into other assets quickly. They will buy real estate, vehicles, or other hard goods, but the government will track those purchases too. Large transactions get reported. You will just move from one monitored asset to another. There is no easy escape once the system activates. The international dimension makes this more complex. Some Americans will try to move silver overseas. They will ship it to Mexico, Canada, or private vaults in Switzerland. This will be classified as an illegal export of strategic materials. Customs will seize shipments. Criminal charges will follow. The government will argue that removing silver from the country during a national emergency is unpatriotic and possibly treasonous. They will make examples of people who try this. The penalties will be severe enough to discourage others. Foreign governments will cooperate with American enforcement. They always do when it serves their interests. Mexico and Canada depend on trade with the United States. Switzerland depends on access to American financial markets. None of them will protect your silver if it means angering Washington. You are trapped in a system designed to prevent escape. The Morgan document acknowledges that some percentage of silver will never be recovered. People will lose it in boating accidents. People will forget where they buried it. People will die without telling anyone where it is hidden. The government has calculated this loss into its models. They accept it. They only need to recover enough silver to meet industrial demand for the next 5 years. After that, new mines will come online, or substitutes will be developed, or demand will decrease. Your individual resistance does not matter to their plan. They built the plan assuming resistance. They priced it in. This is what makes fighting this so difficult. You're not fighting a policy you can change. You are fighting a system that already accounted for your opposition. The broader pattern here is the death of property rights by 1,000 cuts. At first, they regulated what you could do with your property. Then they taxed what you owned. Then they tracked what you bought. Now they simply take what they want. Each step seemed small. Each step seemed justified. Put them together, ER, and you realize you never really owned anything. You were just renting from them government. They let you keep your property until they decided they needed it more. This is the reality Americans over 40 are living in now. The country you grew up in is not the country you live in. The rules you learned are not the rules that apply. The assumptions you made about freedom and ownership were never as solid as you thought. Silver confiscation is not the end of this process. It is the middle. The government is learning how to take assets without provoking rebellion. They are perfecting the techniques. They are studying what works. Once they successfully take silver, they will know they can take anything. The precedent will be set. The infrastructure will be built. The public will be conditioned to accept it. Your retirement accounts become national investment funds. Your home becomes a public housing allocation. Your savings become government resources. Everything is just one emergency away from seizure. This is not paranoia. This is pattern recognition. Look at what the government has done in the past 20 years. Look at what they said was temporary that became permanent. Look at what they said was limited that became universal. Look at what they said would never happen that is happening now. The Morgan leak is not a warning about silver. It is a warning about power. It shows you how modern government operates. Behind closed doors, with detailed plans, with no intention of asking permission. They are not coming for your silver because they are evil. They are coming for your silver because they can, because the legal framework allows it, because the public will not stop it, because you have no realistic way to prevent it. This is how freedom ends. Not with soldiers in the streets, not with dramatic announcements, with leaked documents that most people never read, with bureaucratic processes that sound boring, with legal language that seems reasonable until you realize what it actually means. You're living through the transition from citizen to subject, from property owner to property user, from free individual to managed resource. The question is not whether this will happen. The question is what you do with the time you have left before it's gone. Most people will do nothing. They will hope it does not affect them. They will trust that someone else will fix it. They will believe the government would never really go that far. Those people will surrender their silver in 90 days and wonder how they did not see it coming. Some people will see this clearly. They will understand what is happening and why, but they will feel powerless to stop it. They will comply because resistance seems futile. Those people will keep their freedom in their minds, even as they lose it in reality. A few people will find ways to adapt. They will adjust their plans. They will protect what they can. They will prepare for a future where government control is total and individual liberty is a memory. Those people will survive what is coming, but they will live in a very different country from the one they grew up in. The America you remember is not gone yet, but you can see the end from here. You can see the path. You can see where it leads. Silver confiscation is just 1 mile marker on that path. There will be others. Each one will seem reasonable in isolation. Together, they will lead somewhere you never thought America could go. The Morgan leak proves the government is not hiding their intentions anymore. They are just betting you will not pay attention until it is too late. Are they right about you?